Welcome to Slash Forward. In this episode, we're going to descend into the hell of our own minds with the 1990 psychological horror film Jacob's Ladder. Let's get to it. We open on helicopters dropping supplies in Vietnam, which is good because the men are haggard. They've been lingering here somewhere betwixt life and death for some time. The titular Jacob finishes pooping just off camp, and the men enjoy some salty talk at his expense.
Come over here and jerk on this. Come choke my black rooster.
Oh, that's crass. But Charlie says, screw your levity, and there's movement spotted on the tree line. The response is confused, possibly due to some tainted ganja, and everything turns to chaos. The end result for Jacob involves finding himself alone in the jungle on the business end of a bayonet. And then he flashes forward to modern day, on the subway. He tries to verify if he slept past his stop, forgetting he's in New York City, and surrounded by some of the most colorful of characters. So he hops off, trying to politely ignore this hobo's wet tail. The only way topside requires him to cross the tracks, and he's almost smeared across the ground by the death train. He eventually makes it home to his loving girlfriend. Later, he discovers a package of old pictures that had been dropped off, taking him down memory lane with his prior family, and triggering distant traumatic memories of Kevin McAllister. We learn this was his son who died before the war. Not wanting to see him in pain, his lady drops his past life into the incinerator. We later see that he also works with Jessie, and he tells her he's leaving early due to recurring back pain. He goes to the only person you could trust in these situations, his chiropractor, who tries to convince him to attempt reconciliation with his ex-wife before cracking him back to Nam. He walks home feeling like $1,000,000 until a random car transporting phantoms runs him down and basically undoes his whole adjustment. He goes to see his psychiatrist, but the surly admin has no record of Dr. Carlson working there or of Jacob as a patient. He decides to take a look for himself and busts in on a group therapy session. The facilitator informs him Dr. Carlson died in your everyday run-of-the-mill car explosion. As we all know, there's only one cure for clearing one's head of demons, and it's dirty dancing. Unfortunately, amidst the din and sweat and lights, he sees Jessie being gently caressed by Satan's cock, which sends him. At home, he's discovered to have a temperature of 106, and so he's immediately put in an ice bath to keep his brain from baking. This causes him to wake up with his ex-wife, Sarah, to whom he describes his life with Jessie as a bad dream. They get to doing what comes natural between a man and a woman when they're interrupted by the Colkster. He takes him back to bed, where we see Jacob actually has 2 other sons, but the Colk is his precious golden cherub. He then wakes up back with Jessie, unsure of whether he's dead or alive, and as he begins the slow process of recovery, he bones up on his demonology. He gets a welcome break from this when contacted by his old war buddy, Paul. They meet up for beers and to discuss their descent into hell. Paul admits to having the same visions, and when they leave, he falls victim to your everyday run-of-the-mill car explosion. After the service, all the fellows get together and make similar admissions. They were all seeing Dr. Carlson as well, and they collectively decide to consult with an attorney. They settle on Jason Alexander doing some acting here, and he agrees to take statements and at least start looking into things because he smells a possible class action against the army. Almost immediately, Jake learns the case is dropped. He checks in with Frank, who confirms all the guys dropped out for personal reasons they're not willing to discuss, but Jake insists on moving forward. When he confronts Gary, he learns that the initial check into their story revealed a series of psychological discharges and no record of any of them ever actually making it to Vietnam. On his way home, Jake gets the kind of confrontation that likely convinced the others to back off, but he's continuing to fight the power and provides a fairly serious distraction for the driver before bailing out. On the sidewalk, Santa takes this opportunity to lift his wallet, so he's brought to the hospital ranting about calling his chiropractor and being robbed by Santa Claus. When he wakes up, he's restrained and being wheeled through a part of the hospital where the rules and regulations are somewhat lax, and the environment gets progressively more nightmarish until he gets to his room. Being a teaching hospital, he finds the room somewhat crowded and gets into a verbal jousting match with the surgeon about whether he's alive.
This is your home. You're dead.
I'm alive.
Then what are you doing here?
Checkmate. Louis arrives and removes Jacob under the authority of the Chiropractors Association of America, so he can give him what he truly needs to begin healing: a brief, localized, intense pressure on his spinal cord.
Hallelujah.
Amen. He goes home to review his credentials and reestablish what's real, and gets a call from an anonymous man promising answers. The man was recruited by the army in exchange for avoiding jail time to create a dark LSD that taps into a person's anger and aggression. He called it the Ladder, a quick trip to primal fear. He confirms it was tested on Jacob's group, but it proved too effective. They were given a microdose in their food, knowing from intelligence that a battle was looming, and on that fateful day, the battle ended up being against their own battalion, prior to the enemy even getting there. This is a harsh realization, but one that finally shakes free some repressed memories lingering in the back of Jacob's mind. Jacob takes a cab home as he attempts to process this, and thinks nothing of being dropped at a building with a doorman. He walks into the memory of someone else's life and awakes to find Gabe alive and in desperate need of a haircut. He leads Jake upstairs into the morning light, and when the light goes out, we find him dead in a hospital tent, succumbing to his injuries after a protracted struggle. And that was Jacob's Ladder, an intense and depressing tale of death and loss. If you enjoyed the video, I'd love for you to become a part of the channel by subscribing. Thanks for watching.